stood at the window of his small apartment and watched the ships fly past. They were beautiful things, sleek and fast, carrying cargo and passengers to distant stars. He remembered a time when he had been on those ships not as a passenger but as a marine. Those days were gone now. He was 42 years old. His hair was turning gray at the sides. A piece of metal had torn through his back 15 years ago during the Frontier Wars, and now he walked with a limp that would never go away. The military had given him a pension and a medal and sent him home. They had called him a hero. He did not feel like a hero. For the past 10 years had made his living as a salvager. He flew alone in a small shuttle to the dead places of space, the areas where nobody else wanted to go. He found old ships, broken stations, and forgotten equipment. He fixed what he could and sold it for money. It was not exciting work, but it was honest. Today, something caught his eye on his computer screen. The Galactic Commerce Authority was selling an old orbital station. The station was called KR7714, and it was located in a debris field near a collapsed mining colony. The records said it was hazardous and not worth fixing. The price was very low, almost nothing. Read the information 3 times. The station was old, maybe 80 years or more. Nobody had been inside it for decades. The government said the power was probably dead and the hull was probably damaged, but saw something else in the technical specifications. The hull was made of titanium carbide composite. They had built things strong in those days, built them to last. He made a decision. He used all of his savings, every credit he had earned in 10 years of salvage work, and he bought the station. His old friend called him that night on the video link. She was working security on a trade station 3 systems away. They had served together in the Marines, and she was one of the few people from those days that he still talked to. "You did what?" said. Her face on the screen showed disbelief. "You bought that piece of junk. That thing has been dead for 80 years. The power cores are probably melted slag by now." "The records say it has backup solar collectors," replied. He was already packing his shuttle. "The atmospheric processors might still be running on minimal power." "Might be," said, "or might not be. You could open the door and find nothing but vacuum. You could find the whole thing falling apart. You spent everything on this." "Everything," admitted. Was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "You always were stubborn. That's why you're still alive, I guess. Just be careful, okay? Call me when you get there." Promised he would. Then he finished loading his shuttle and flew away from the apartment he had called home for 5 years. He did not look back. The journey took 2 weeks. Spent most of that time alone with his thoughts, watching the stars slide past his windows. He thought about the war, about the friends he had lost, about the young soldiers who had trusted him to lead them and had not come home. He thought about his life since then, the quiet years of salvage work, the loneliness that had become his constant companion. He wondered if buying this station was crazy. Maybe was right. Maybe he was throwing away everything on a dream that would turn to dust when he arrived. But something inside him said no. Something told him this was important. When the debris field appeared on his sensors, felt his heart beat faster. There were thousands of pieces of wreckage floating in space, the remains of the mining colony that had collapsed generations ago. Somewhere in that graveyard of metal and rock was his station. He found it after 3 hours of careful searching. KR7714 was larger than he had expected. It hung in the darkness like a sleeping giant, its hull still intact despite the years. No lights were visible from outside, but the structure was whole. The debris had not touched it. Guided his shuttle close and extended the docking arm. The connection was rough, the old mechanisms grinding and protesting, but finally the seal locked into place. He put on his environment suit and checked his air supply. Then he opened the door. The station was dark. His flashlight cut through the blackness, showing walls covered in dust and frost. The air was cold, so cold that his breath came out in clouds even through his helmet. But there was air. The atmospheric processors were still working, just as he had hoped. Emergency lights flickered on as his shuttle's power fed into the ancient circuits. They were dim and red, casting strange shadows on the walls, but they worked. Felt a smile form on his face. The station was alive, barely alive, but alive. He spent his first week exploring and mapping. The station had multiple levels, more than the official blueprints showed. Some corridors were sealed with heavy doors. Some compartments did not appear on any record he had. This was strange. Why would a mining support station have hidden areas? Found living quarters that could house 50 people. He found medical bays with equipment he did not recognize. He found a command center with screens and computers that were far more advanced than anything a simple mining station would need. On the 8th day, he was cutting through a welded bulkhead in what the blueprints called a storage bay. His cutting torch burned through the metal slowly, sending sparks into the darkness. When the cut was complete, he pushed the metal aside and stepped through. His flashlight revealed a large chamber that was not on any blueprint. The air here was different, preserved somehow, cleaner than the rest of the station. Along the walls were cases made of a material he did not recognize, sealed tight against the years. In the center of the chamber was a terminal, a computer terminal with a small light still blinking. After 80 years, something in this station was still waiting. Approach the terminal slowly. His marine training told him to be careful, to scan for traps, to expect danger. But there was no danger here, only silence and dust and the steady blink of that small light. He looked at the cases along the walls. Through the transparent material, he could see objects inside. Some looked like tools, some looked like weapons, some looked like nothing he had ever seen before. They were not human-made, he was certain of that. Stood alone in the hidden chamber, his heart pounding in his chest, and realized that he had found something much bigger than an abandoned station. He had found a secret that someone had worked very hard to bury. And now he had to decide what to do with it. Did not sleep that night. He sat in his shuttle, staring at the wall, thinking about what he had found. The hidden chamber, the alien artifacts, the terminal that was still blinking after 80 years. He knew the law. Alien artifacts were supposed to be reported to the Galactic Heritage Commission. They would send a team. They would take everything away. They would give him a small reward and tell him thank you for being a good citizen. But something felt wrong about that. Why was this chamber hidden? Why were these things sealed away in a place that was not on any official record? Someone had put them here in secret and wanted to know why before he told anyone. The Marine inside him, the part that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours, was telling him to be careful. Trust no one until you know the truth. He needed help not from the government but from someone he trusted. He thought of Park. Had served in his unit during the war. She had been a naval cryptographer, one of the best at breaking enemy codes and reading hidden messages. During an ambush on a planet called 442b, had carried her to safety when she was wounded. She had told him then that she owed him her life. After the war, had become a data archaeologist. She traveled around the galaxy, helping people recover lost information from old computers and damaged systems. If anyone could unlock the secrets of that terminal, it was her. Sent her a message, encrypted with an old military code that only they knew. He told her he had found something strange. He told her he needed her help. He did not say more than that. 3 weeks later, a small research vessel appeared at the edge of the debris field. Had come. She docked her ship next to his shuttle and met her at the airlock. She was thinner than he remembered, her black hair now showing streaks of gray. But her eyes were the same, sharp and intelligent, always looking for the puzzle hidden beneath the surface. "You look old," she said when she saw him. "You look worse," he replied. They both smiled. It was good to see a friendly face. Led her through the station, showing her the repairs he had started, the systems he had brought back to life. He had restored basic power to most of the main sections. The atmospheric processors were running stronger now. The station was warming up, slowly becoming livable again. But was not interested in the repairs. She wanted to see the hidden chamber. When they stepped through the cut in the bulkhead, stopped and stared. Her eyes moved across the cases, the artifacts, the blinking terminal. She was silent for a long time. "This is not possible," she finally said. "What do you mean?" "This equipment," she pointed at the terminal. "This is pre-contact technology. This is from before humans even knew aliens existed. How can there be alien artifacts in a human station from that time?" Had no answer. He watched as approached the terminal, her hands moving carefully over the controls. She connected her portable computer and began to work. For 6 days, barely slept. She ate when brought her food, drank when he put water in her hand, but her attention never left the terminal. The encryption was old but very sophisticated, she told him. Layers upon layers of security designed to keep the information hidden for centuries. On the 7th day, she cracked it. She called, her voice was shaking. "You need to see this." He came to her side and looked at the screen. Files were opening one after another. Documents, images, video recordings, all of it in a mix of human and alien text. KR-7714 was never a mining station, said. It was a diplomatic outpost, a meeting place between early human explorers and a species called the. This was established 40 years before our official first contact with the galactic community. Felt his mind trying to understand. That is not possible. Our history says we met the first. They introduced us to the rest of the galaxy. Our history is wrong, said. She pulled up another document. Look at this. They gave us jump drive technology. They shared their star charts with us. They accelerated our expansion by generations. Everything we think we achieved on our own, they helped us with. Why would they hide this? Was already reading ahead, her face growing pale. Because they had enemies, old enemies, powerful enemies, species that had been fighting them for thousands of years. They warned our ancestors that if the Alliance became known, those enemies would destroy humanity too. Though said slowly, I have heard that name, they are listed as extinct. Yes, voice was barely a whisper now. A plague wiped them out 2 centuries ago, that is what the records say. She opened another file. It was a video, old and fuzzy, showing a meeting between humans and tall beings with bronze-colored skin and large dark eyes. They were smiling at each other, shaking hands, exchanging documents. They were our friends, said, our first friends in the galaxy, and then they died. Maybe open more files, reading faster now, or maybe not, look at this. It was a warning written in both human and languages. It spoke of the Alliance being discovered. It spoke of plans to destroy the. It spoke of a plague that would be created in a laboratory designed to kill only them. The plague was not natural, said, understanding hit him like a punch to the stomach. Someone made it, someone murdered them. Not just someone, pointed at names in the document, names of species and governments that recognized. They were the great powers of the galaxy today, the species that controlled trade and politics and military force. The people who rule the galaxy now, they killed the to prevent humanity from having allies. Sat down heavily on a storage crate. The weight of what he was learning pressed down on him. Everything he thought he knew about history, about humanity's place in the galaxy, was a lie. They had been manipulated from the beginning, kept weak and alone while the powers that be maintained their control. Why leave this here, he asked. Why hide this information instead of destroying it? Was quiet for a moment. Then she found one more file, the last one in the archive. It was a message recorded by just before the plague spread. The alien's voice was sad but calm. We are leaving this record for the future. We believe the humans will survive what is coming. They are strong in ways that other species are not. They care for strangers. They fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We believe that someday a human will find this place and learn the truth. When that day comes, we hope the Alliance can be reborn. We hope that humanity will remember us. We were their friends and we believed in them when no one else did. The recording ended. And sat in silence for a long time. Outside the station, the debris field turned slowly in the darkness, the grave of a colony that had died long ago. Inside, 2 humans held in their hands the secret that could change everything. What do we do? Asked. Looked at the artifacts, at the terminal, at the message from a dead species who had believed in humanity. He thought about his years as a Marine fighting wars that he now suspected had been arranged by the same powers who had murdered the. He thought about his friends who had died, never knowing the truth. We find out if anyone survived, he said. We find out if they are really gone, and if they are not, we bring them home. Weeks passed, and worked together in the hidden chamber, cataloging every artifact and reading every file. The more they learned, the more they understood how deeply the truth had been buried. They had been a peaceful species, more interested in science and art than in war. They had traveled the galaxy for thousands of years, making friends where they could, avoiding conflicts when possible. But their technology was advanced, far more advanced than most other species, and this had made powerful enemies jealous. When they found humanity, they saw something special. They watched human explorers for decades before making contact, studying how humans behaved when they thought no one was watching. What they saw impressed them. Human soldiers gave their food to hungry children they had never met. Human doctors treated wounded enemies with the same care as their own people. Human scientists shared their discoveries freely instead of hoarding them for profit. Humans were not perfect, the records said, but they had something rare in the galaxy. They had compassion. They decided to take a risk. They approached humanity in secret and offered friendship. For 40 years, the Alliance grew. The shared technology that helped humans build better ships, better medicine, better tools. In return, humans shared something they had lost long ago, hope. They were an old species, tired and fatting. Contact with the young and energetic humans gave them new purpose. But the secret could not be kept forever. The great powers learned of the Alliance and they were afraid. If humans had technology and support, they could challenge the existing order. The powers decided this could not be allowed. The plague was created in a hidden laboratory. It targeted only biology, spreading through their population like fire through dry grass. Within 1 generation, they were nearly gone. Or so the galaxy believed. Among the artifacts in the chamber found a communication device. It was small, shaped like an oval stone, made of a material that felt warm to the touch. The power readings showed it was still holding a charge after all these years. Should we try to use it? Asked. Looked at the device. He thought about the message from the dying, the hope that someday a human would find this place. He thought about the Alliance that had been destroyed by greed and fear. Yes, he said, let us see if anyone answers. Activated the device. It hummed softly, then sent out a signal that neither of them could hear or see. They waited. 3 days later, something appeared at the edge of the debris field. Was in the command center when the sensors detected it. A ship was emerging from jump space, but it was like no ship in any galactic registry. The design was organic, flowing curves and smooth surfaces as if it had been grown rather than built. It was beautiful and strange and completely unknown. The ship broadcast a message. The universal translator, which could handle almost any known language in the galaxy, produced only static, but the old terminal in the hidden chamber translated it perfectly. "We are the last, we have waited for the signal. Are you the inheritors?" His hands were shaking as he sent his reply. "This is of Earth, we found your station, we found your records." A long silence followed, then the answer came. "A human after all this time, we had hoped. The were alive." They asked permission to come aboard. Granted it. He and waited at the main airlock, both of them nervous, both of them aware that they were about to meet a species that the galaxy had believed dead for 200 years. The airlock opened. Three stepped through. They were tall, taller than humans, with limbs that seemed too long and too thin. Their skin was the color of polished bronze, and their eyes were large and dark, holding depths that seemed to contain centuries of sorrow. They moved gracefully, like dancers, like creatures from a dream. Their leader was old, very old, could see it in the lines of her face and the way she carried herself. But her eyes were sharp and clear, and when she looked at him, he felt as if she was seeing everything he had ever been. "I am called Grandmother Sarai," she said. Her voice was musical, each word flowing into the next. "The name is only for convenience. Your language cannot say my true name." "I am," he said. "This is Park. We found your station and learned what happened to your people. We are sorry." Grandmother Sarai made a gesture that might have been a nod. "You should not apologize for the crimes of others. Come, let us talk. There is much to say, and we have waited a long time to say it." They sat in the station's main common room, which had cleaned and repaired over the past weeks. Grandmother Sarai told them the truth of history, the full story that the records in the chamber had only hinted at. When the plague began to spread, they had realized what was happening. They could not stop it, but they could save some of their people. A small fleet escaped to the dark spaces between stars, the empty regions where no species traveled and no sensors looked. They erased all evidence of their escape and let the galaxy believe they were extinct. "We have been hiding for 200 years, Grandmother Sarai said. Watching, waiting, hopping." "Hopping for what?" asked. "For this moment," the old looked at. "We left the station as a beacon. We knew it might take generations, but we believed that someday a human would find it. A human who could be trusted. A human who would listen." "Why humans?" asked. "Why did you choose to trust us?" Grandmother Sorai's dark eyes seemed to look through him, into his past, into his soul. "Because you are different from the other species in this galaxy. We watched you before we made contact. We saw things that we had not seen in other species for thousands of years." "What things?" "Your soldiers dying for civilians they had never met. Your medics treating wounded enemies. Your people giving food to strangers when they themselves were hungry." Grandmother Sarai paused. "You fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. You care about justice even when it costs you. You are flawed and violent and sometimes cruel, but you have something precious. You have compassion that extends beyond your own kind." She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm, warmer than human skin. "We lost that quality long ago," she said. "The other great powers never had it, only humans. That is why we chose you. That is why we believed in you. That is why we have been waiting for you to find us." Felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. He thought about all the soldiers he had known, the ones who had given their lives for strangers on distant planets. He thought about the medics who had worked through the night to save anyone they could, friend or enemy. He thought about his own choices, the times he had risked everything for people he did not know. "What do you want from us?" he asked. Grandmother Sarai's expression changed. Something like hope flickered in her ancient eyes. "We want to come home," she said. "We want to restore the Alliance. We want to show the galaxy what was done to us and to you, but we know this is dangerous. The powers that destroyed us once will try to destroy us again. And this time they will try to destroy you too." She looked back at him. Neither of them spoke, but they both knew what they were thinking. This was bigger than them. This was bigger than one station, one salvager, one cryptographer. This was a chance to change history, to right a wrong that had been hidden for centuries. It was also a chance to start a war. "Tell us everything," said, "then we will decide together what to do." Could not sleep anymore. Every night he lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling, thinking about the choice in front of him. During the day, he met with Grandmother Sarai and her people, learning more about thee and the alliance that had been destroyed. During the night, he wrestled with what all of it meant. They wanted to reveal themselves to the galaxy. They wanted to expose the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed their species. They wanted to restore the forbidden alliance with humanity. But doing so would put Earth in danger. The powers that had committed genocide once would not hesitate to do it again. Humanity was stronger now than it had been 2 centuries ago, but it was still young, still weak compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. Was just one man, a salvager with a bad leg and a small station in the middle of nowhere. What could he possibly do against forces that had shaped galactic history for thousands of years? He knew the answer. He could do what Marines had always done. He could stand up, he could fight. He called first. "You found what?" she said when he told her. Her face on the video screen showed shock, then anger, then determination. "Tell me you are joking. Tell me this is some kind of trick." "It is not a trick," said. "I have seen the evidence. I have met the survivors. Everything we were taught about history is a lie." Was quiet for a long moment, then she said, "What do you need?" "People, ships, anyone who still remembers what it means to serve something bigger than themselves." She nodded slowly. "I know some veterans, good people, people I would trust with my life. Let me make some calls." Within a week, arrived at the station with a squad of former soldiers. They were men and women who had fought in the frontier wars, who had seen the worst that the galaxy had to offer, who had come home damaged but not broken. They listened as told them the truth. Some of them cried, some of them cursed, all of them stayed. Reached out to her network of data archaeologists and independent journalists. These were people who had spent their careers digging for information that powerful forces wanted to keep hidden. They had always suspected that official history was incomplete, that there were secrets buried beneath the surface. Now they had proof. The biggest surprise came from was a retired admiral who now ran a private security company. He had commanded fleets during the war, won battles that had seemed impossible, earned the respect of everyone who had served under him. Had only met him once briefly at a military ceremony years ago, but had heard about what was happening on KR 7714. Word was spreading through the veteran community, carefully, quietly, but unstoppable. The old admiral contacted directly. "I have 2 armed corvettes and crews who know how to use them," said. His face was weathered, his voice tired but strong. "I have spent my whole life serving a government that I now learn has been lying to us from the beginning. If what you say is true, I want to help make it right." The station began to fill with people. Veterans, scientists, journalists, supporters who came in small ships from across the sector, bringing supplies and equipment and, most importantly, hope. The abandoned orbital station that had bought with his life savings was becoming something else. It was becoming a movement. They contributed too. They provided evidence that could not be, recordings and documents and genetic analyses proving that the plague had been manufactured. They also provided something else, something that changed everything. Hidden throughout the sector, in places that the great powers had never found, were caches of weapons. Technology that could level the playing field against any fleet in the galaxy. Grandmother Sorai told the locations. "We hid these for the day when the Alliance would return," she said. "We knew that words alone would not be enough. The powers will not give up their control without a fight." Looked at the tactical display showing the weapon cache locations. Any one of them contained enough firepower to destroy a fleet. Together, they represented a force that could challenge the galactic order itself. "This will mean war," he said. "Perhaps," Grandmother Sorai replied. "Perhaps not immediately, but eventually, yes. They will not let this truth spread without trying to stop it. They will come for us and for you." Thought about his friends who had died in wars that he now suspected had been arranged by these same powers. He thought about the young soldiers he had led into battle, believing they were fighting for freedom and justice, never knowing that they were pawns in a game much bigger than themselves. He thought about the hidden in the dark for 2 centuries, waiting for a human to find them, waiting for someone who would listen. "We need to tell Earth," he said. "We need to tell everyone." The broadcast was prepared carefully, and her people assembled the evidence in a way that could not be dismissed or ignored. Recordings of the original alliance, documents showing the creation of the plague, genetic proof that it had been manufactured, testimony from Grandmother Sorai and the other survivors. They sent it on every frequency, through every relay station, into every corner of the galaxy. Spoke at the end. "My name is, I am a former Marine of the Republic. I bought an abandoned station and found a secret that has been buried for 2 centuries. What I am about to tell you will change everything you think you know about history." He told them about the Alliance, about the conspiracy that had destroyed it, about the plague and the lies and the powers that had kept humanity alone and weak for generations. "This is not just about the past," he said. "This is about the future. We have a chance to build something new, something better. But we have to be willing to fight for it. We have to be willing to stand up to the forces that have been controlling our destiny without our knowledge or consent." The broadcast ended, sat back in his chair and looked at the faces around him. The veterans and scientists and journalists who had gathered on this station, the who had waited so long for this moment. "It is done," he said. "Now we see what happens." What happened was chaos. Across human space, people reacted to the broadcast with shock and anger. Some demanded immediate war against the powers responsible. Others called for calm and negotiation. Politicians made speeches. Military leaders issued statements. The galactic media tried to spin the story, to dismiss it, to explain it away, but the evidence was too strong. And then the other powers responded. The collective, the most powerful government in the galaxy, everything. They called the broadcast a hoax, the survivors fake, the evidence manufactured by enemies who wanted to destabilize the galactic order. But their denial came too late. Ships began arriving at KR 7714. Not enemies but allies. Human ships from a dozen different colonies, manned by people who had seen the broadcast and believed. Military vessels whose captains had decided to follow their conscience instead of their orders. Civilian transports carrying supplies and volunteers. And not just humans. Other species came too, they who had their own reasons to hate the collective. They whose ancient records spoke of a time when they had been more than they were now. Small delegations from a dozen smaller species, all carrying stories that had been dismissed as legends for generations. The station that had bought to restore was becoming the center of something much larger. It was becoming the heart of a rebellion. Grandmother Sorai found him standing at the observation window, watching the fleet gather in the debris field around the station. "You have done well," she said. Shook his head. "I have started something I cannot control. People are going to die because of what I did." "People were already dying," the old said gently. "They were dying in wars arranged by the powers for their own benefit. They were dying without knowing the truth. At least now they have a choice. At least now they can fight for something real." She put her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm and reassuring. "This is what we saw in humanity," she said. "This is why we chose you. You do not run from danger. You do not abandon those who need you. You stand and fight even when the odds are against you." Watch the ships gathering outside. Somewhere out there, the powers that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were preparing their response. War was coming. But for the first time since he had left the military, felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The collective came 3 months after the broadcast. Was in the command center when the sensors detected the jump signatures. 12 ships appeared at the edge of the debris field, warships of the most powerful navy in the galaxy. They were beautiful in a terrible way, sleek and deadly, designed to destroy anything that opposed them. The commander of the collective fleet sent a message. "You have 1 hour to surrender. Anyone who resists will be destroyed. Anyone who surrenders will face justice for their crimes against galactic stability." Looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was larger and better armed than anything in his collection of salvage ships and military deserters. By any reasonable calculation, they should surrender. They should beg for mercy and hope that the collective would show some kindness. But Marines did not surrender, and humans did not abandon their allies. "All ships prepare for combat," said. "Target their lead vessel, fire on my command." The battle begins. The Liberation Alliance, as the media had started calling them, was but not outmatched. The veterans who had gathered on KR 7714 knew how to fight. The weapons were more powerful than anything the collective expected. And most importantly, the Alliance was fighting for something they believed in, while the collective was fighting to maintain a lie. The first exchange of fire was brutal. Collective weapons tore through one of the smaller Alliance ships, killing everyone aboard in seconds. But the return fire was worse. An energy beam cut through the lead collective warship like a knife through paper, splitting it in half. For 6 hours, the battle raged. Ships exploded. People died. The debris field that surrounded the station became thick with wreckage and bodies. But when it was over, the collective was retreating. They had lost 8 of their 12 ships. The Alliance had lost 5, but the station was still standing and the fleet was still fighting. The galaxy watched the battle through the feeds that had established. They saw the collective attack an obviously inferior force. They saw the Alliance fight back with courage and skill. They saw the supposedly invincible collective navy broken and driven away. Everything changed after that. Human colonies that had been hesitant began sending support openly. Military forces that had been waiting to see who would win started joining the Alliance. Species that had been silent, afraid of collective punishment, began speaking out. They were the first to officially join. They were a client race of the collective, expected to obey without question, but they had their own memories of oppression. Their leaders came to the station and signed an agreement of mutual defense. The came next, they were considered primitive by galactic standards, farmers and craftsmen rather than warriors or scientists. But their ancient records spoke of a time when their ancestors had sailed between the stars before the collective bombed them back to there and destroyed their technology. They had waited thousands of years for revenge. More species came, a dozen, then 2 dozen. Each one had stories of oppression, of manipulation, of crimes committed by the great powers. What had started as an alliance between humans and was becoming something much larger. It was becoming a movement for freedom across the entire galaxy. Found himself leading something he never expected. His station became the nerve center of the Liberation Alliance. His name became a symbol of resistance. People called him Admiral, even though he had never held that rank in the military. He was not comfortable with any of it. He was a salvager, a veteran with a bad leg and too many memories of friends who had died. He was not a hero or a leader or a symbol. But he kept going because the people around him needed him to keep going. Needed him, needed him. Grandmother Sarai needed him. The millions of beings across the galaxy who had put their hope in this movement needed him. A year after the broadcast, the Galactic Accords were signed. The negotiations took months. The great powers tried to delay, tried to manipulate, tried to find ways to maintain their control. But too many species had joined the alliance. Too many truths had been revealed. The old order was finished and everyone knew it. The Accords recognized the crimes that had been committed against the and other species. They established new rules for galactic governance, rules that gave smaller species a voice and prevented any single power from dominating the others. They created a framework for justice, for accountability, for a future that was different from the past. They came out of hiding. There were not many of them left, less than 10,000 survivors of a species that had once numbered in the billions. But they were alive and they were free and they had a place in the galaxy again. Grandmother Sarai was there when the first joint human colony ship departed for a new world. She stood on the observation deck of KR-7714, watching the ship accelerate toward the stars. "You were right to trust us," she said. "All those years ago when my ancestors watched your people and wondered if the alliance was worth the risk, they were right." Shook his head. "We are just stubborn, too stubborn to let good people die alone." The old made a sound that might have been laughter. "Yes, that is exactly why we chose you." She turned to face him, her dark eyes holding centuries of wisdom and sorrow and hope. "When we first found humanity, we were dying, not from plague or war but from despair. We had lived too long, seen too much, lost too many things we cared about. We had forgotten why existence mattered." She reached out and took his hand. Her skin was warm against his. "You reminded us, your passion, your stubbornness, your endless capacity to care about strangers and fight for things that do not benefit you. You are not the strongest species in the galaxy or the most advanced. But you have something that cannot be measured, or you have heart." Looked at the colony ship as it disappeared into the distance. He thought about everything that had happened since he bought an abandoned station with his life savings. He thought about the friends he had lost and the friends he had found. He thought about the alliance that had been buried and the one that had risen from its ashes. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we build," Grandmother Sarai said. "We build a future that is better than the past. We make sure that what was done to us is never done to anyone else. We protect the weak and challenge the powerful and try to leave the galaxy a little better than we found it." She smiled, and for a moment she looked young again, full of hope and purpose. "It will not be easy. There will be setbacks and failures and moments when everything seems lost. But we will not give up. We will not abandon each other. That is what the alliance means." Nodded. He was tired, more tired than he had ever been in his life. But he was also at peace. He had bought a dead station and found a living cause. He had started as a salvager and become something else entirely. He was not sure what to call himself anymore, admiral or leader or symbol, but he knew what he believed. He believed in the alliance. He believed in humanity. He believed that stubborn people who refused to give up could change the galaxy. The station hummed around them, no longer abandoned, no longer forgotten. It was a monument now, a place where the future was being built. Ships came and went, carrying people and supplies and hope to every corner of the sector. Somewhere out there, the old powers were licking their wounds and planning their next move. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more losses. The fight was not over. It might never be over. But had been fighting his whole life. First as a Marine, then as a salvager, now as something else entirely. he was used to it. And he was not alone anymore. The Alliance was reborn, humanity had found its place in the galaxy, and the future, for the first time in a very long time, was full of possibility.